Darius Cole was 38 years old, a black single father who had buried his wife 3 years ago and never quite buried the silence that came after. He lived with his 7-year-old son Eli in a tired wooden house on the edge of town. One rainy October evening, a pregnant young woman knocked on his door. She did not beg. She only said, "If you let me stay, I'll do the housework for you." Darius almost said no. Then she said one more sentence, and Darius stood frozen at the door, unable to close it again. 3 years before the rainy October night when the pregnant woman knocked, Darius Cole had still been able to sit across from his wife at breakfast and complain about cold coffee, as if cold coffee were a problem worth having. Then Elena got sick. The cancer took 11 months to finish what it came to do. When it was over, Darius was left with a 5-year-old son who stopped talking for almost half a year and a wooden house on the edge of town that no longer felt like a house at all, only a building they happened to live inside. By the time Eli turned 7, Darius had built something resembling a life. Not a good one, a functional one. He worked at Monroe's garage on the south side of town, fixing transmissions and replacing brake pads for people who never asked his name. He came home at 6. He cooked simple things. Eggs and toast spaghetti from a box, the kind of food a man makes when cooking has become a duty rather than a pleasure. He read to Eli for 20 minutes before bed, often the same book 3 nights in a row because Eli liked the rhythm of repetition. After that, he sat in the living room with the television turned low and stared at a spot above it where Elena's wedding photograph still hung slightly crooked from the time the frame had slipped off the nail. He had rehung it without measuring. He had not measured anything in 3 years. Elena's coat still hung on the hook by the front door. He knew this was strange. He knew that the few people who had visited in the early months had noticed it and said nothing. Her Christmas decorations from the last December she lived through were still in the hall closet in the cardboard box she had labeled in green marker. He had not opened the box. He had not thrown it out. Some doors, once a man closes them, he simply does not have the strength to open again, not even to throw away what is behind them. Eli was a quiet boy. He had not always been. There were home videos somewhere on a hard drive. Darius could not bring himself to plug in videos in which a 4-year-old Eli sang made-up songs about dinosaurs and laughed at his own jokes. The boy who lived in the house now drew pictures instead of singing them. He drew his mother from memory again and again on lined paper from his school notebook, and he kept the drawings folded under his pillow. Darius had found them once while changing the sheets, and he had said nothing. Some things a father does not speak aloud. The hardest part of Eli was not his silence. It was the questions he asked when he did speak. The previous winter, eating cereal at the kitchen table, the boy had said without looking up, "Dad, is Mom cold under the ground?" Darius had stood at the counter with a coffee mug halfway to his mouth, and for nearly a full minute, no answer would come. He said something about heaven, something he did not really believe. Eli had nodded and returned to his cereal, as if the question had been about the weather. That was the kind of life they had built. Quiet, careful, narrow as a hallway. There is a kind of grief that does not end with tears. It ends with a man learning to wake up early to pack a school lunch, to never look at the empty chair across the breakfast table. Darius did not deny Elena. He simply refused to remember her for longer than a minute a day. Anything more, and the day broke apart in his hands. The knock came on a Tuesday in late October, just after 6 in the evening. It had been raining since noon, the slow, heavy kind of rain that turns gutters into small rivers and convinces people to stay home. Darius had just slid a pan of cornbread into the oven. Eli was at the kitchen table with his colored pencils drawing what looked like a tree, but might have been a person. With Eli's drawings, it was sometimes hard to tell the difference, and Darius had learned not to ask. The knock was firm, not loud, not desperate. 3 even taps the way a person knocks when they have rehearsed knocking on the way over. Darius wiped his hands on a dish towel and walked to the front door. Through the small window, he could make out the outline of someone on the porch. A young woman in a thin coat that was clearly not warm enough for the weather. Her dark hair flattened by rain, a canvas bag slung across her shoulder. He almost did not open the door. He had stopped opening the door for strangers a long time ago. Then, the woman shifted, and he saw the curve of her belly beneath the coat, and something in him refused to leave a pregnant woman standing in the rain. He opened the door. She did not say hello. She did not apologize for the time of day or for being wet or for being there at all. She looked him straight in the eye, and what he noticed first was how young she was, 24 maybe, and how tired she looked. Tired in the way a person gets tired when they have been tired a long time and have stopped counting. "If you let me stay," she said, "I'll do the housework for you." For a moment, Darius said nothing. He had a refusal already shaped on his tongue. He had stopped letting strangers into his life a long time ago. He had stopped letting most things in. Before he could speak, she went on. "I can cook. I can clean. I'm not asking for charity. A week, a month, whatever you'll give me. I'm offering a trade." He found his voice. "I'm sorry. I can't help you." He started to close the door.
"Wait," she said. "Please. I picked this house. I didn't just walk down the street."
He stopped with his hand on the door.
"Why this house?"
She reached into her canvas bag and pulled out a piece of paper folded into quarters. The paper was yellowed at the creases, the kind of yellow that takes years to develop. She held it out to him in the rain.
"My name is Amara Williams," she said.
8 years ago, I was 16. I was sleeping at the bus station downtown. A woman bought me dinner at the diner across the street. She didn't ask my name. She paid for the food and she wrote down an address on a napkin and she said, "If you ever need somewhere to start over, don't come to my house but go to this neighborhood and ask for Mr. Cole. He's a good man. Tell him Elena sent you. I kept the napkin. I have kept it for 8 years." Darius took the paper from her hand. His fingers were not quite steady. He unfolded it, and there, in handwriting he had not seen in 3 years, handwriting that had once written grocery lists on the refrigerator, and small notes inside birthday cards, was his own address, and below it the words, "Tell him Elena sent you." Behind him, Eli had come out of the kitchen and was standing in the hallway looking up at the woman on the porch with the wide, wordless attention he usually saved for drawings he could not finish. Darius stood with the napkin between his fingers, and for a moment his mouth refused to work. It was Elena's writing. The curl on the capital E, the slight backward lean of the lowercase t, the small economy of her letters that had always made her grocery lists look like poems. There was no heart at the bottom. She had only drawn those on notes meant for him. This one had been meant for someone else. He did not understand. Elena had never told him about a girl at a bus station. Elena had told him most things, but not this one. He thought of all the evenings he had come home and found her pulling on her coat, saying she had an errand, saying she would be back in an hour. He had never asked. Elena had been the kind of woman who believed kindness was something you did with your hands, not your mouth. He looked at Amara again. Rain had soaked through her coat. The canvas bag on her shoulder looked half empty. Her face was steady, but he could see her trying not to shake. "Did you know she's gone?" he asked before he meant to. Amara nodded once. "I called the hospital downtown. They said she passed 3 years ago. I almost did not come, but there was nowhere else." Then he looked down at Eli. The boy had not said a word, but there was something in his eyes Darius had not seen in a very long time. Not fear, not grief, curiosity. The unguarded curiosity of a child who has not yet learned to brace for the next bad thing. Darius cleared his throat. His voice came out rougher than he intended. "There's a storage room out back," he said. "It's not much. There's a mattress and a heater. It's dry. You can have it for a week. After that, you find somewhere else." Amara nodded once. She did not thank him in a rush of words. She nodded the way a person nods when they understand the full weight of what has just been given to them. "Thank you, Mr. Cole," she said. He stepped aside to let her in. Eli, who had been holding onto a corner of his father's shirt, without realizing it for almost 3 years, let go without thinking. He turned and followed the stranger into the house. Sometimes kindness does not begin with trust. It begins with a yellowed piece of paper with the unguarded eyes of a child, with the slow realization that the people we have loved were kinder than we ever knew. And sometimes the small kindnesses of the dead, the ones we never even learned about, are still strong enough years later to open a door for the living. The first week, Amara moved through the house like someone trying not to leave footprints. She rose before Darius did started the coffee and was already in the kitchen when he came down the stairs in his work shirt. She did not greet him with brightness. She greeted him with a nod and a clean mug on the counter, and that suited him. Brightness in the morning would have felt like a lie. She did not enter the back bedroom. The door at the end of the hall stayed closed the way it had stayed closed for 3 years, and Amara seemed to understand without being told that the closed door belonged to someone she was not allowed to ask about. She cleaned the kitchen, the living room, the small bathroom near the front. She did not touch Elena's coat on the hook, although she dusted around it. Darius kept his distance the way a man keeps his distance from a stove he is not sure is hot. He ate his breakfast in 3 minutes and left for the garage. In the evenings, he ate at the kitchen table, while Amara ate standing at the counter, and although he told himself this was his right as the man of the house, he knew somewhere underneath that it was simply easier than learning a new face across from him. Eli was the one who built the bridge. The boy had always drawn his mother in secret, but on the 3rd day, Amara was in the house. Darius came home and found a new drawing on the kitchen table half finished. It was a woman with dark hair and a round belly. The pencil work was careful. Eli had not drawn anyone but Elena in 3 years. By the end of the first week, Eli had begun asking Amara about the baby. He wanted to know if it was a boy or a girl. He wanted to know what color its eyes would be. He wanted to know if it could hear them through the skin. Amara answered him patiently, and one evening she let him put his small hand against her stomach and wait. When the baby kicked, Eli's whole face rearranged itself into something Darius had not seen in years, a kind of astonished joy, the kind a child wears when the world surprises him with a gift he did not know to ask for. Darius watched from the doorway and did not let himself smile. On a Thursday night, Amara made salmon stew. She had bought the salmon with money from her own pocket, a small wad of bills Darius had not seen her take out before, and she made it the way her grandmother had taught her, with potatoes and dill and a little cream at the end. Darius came in from the garage, hung his coat, and the smell hit him before he reached the kitchen. He stopped in the hallway. Elena had made salmon stew. Elena had made salmon stew almost every other Sunday for the 7 years they were married. The smell dill and cream and onion had been the smell of his Sundays, the smell of a wife humming over a pot, the smell of a life he had buried so deep he had stopped expecting to find pieces of it on ordinary Thursdays. He sat down at the table. He did not say anything. Eli looked at him and then at Amara and seemed to understand in his quiet way that something was happening that words would only damage. They ate in silence. The stew was very good. That night, after Eli was asleep, Darius stood in the hallway in front of Elena's closed door for a long time. He did not open it. He only stood there the way a man stands at the edge of an ocean he used to swim in. Kindness does not announce itself the way betrayal does. When someone wounds us, we remember the day, the hour, the exact words. When someone is kind to us, we often only realize it years later, sometimes never. Amara had cooked a stew without knowing whose recipe she was honoring, or perhaps the kind hands of this world in some quiet way are always reaching across years to find each other even when they never meet. Elena's mother had a key to the house. Darius had given it to her after the funeral, and although he sometimes wished he could ask for it back, he never had, because Patricia Hayes had lost what no mother should lose, and a key to her grandson's house was a small thing to leave in her hand. Patricia visited on the 2nd Saturday of every month. She brought a casserole, asked Eli about school, sat in the living room for 1 hour, and left. The visits were short and formal, but they were faithful. Elena had been her only daughter, and Eli was the closest thing Patricia had left to her. She did not call ahead the Saturday she found Amara in the kitchen. It was just past 11 in the morning. Darius was under a truck at the garage. Eli was in the backyard with a stick conducting an army of leaves. Amara was at the stove wearing the apron Elena had bought at a craft fair the spring before she got sick. A white apron with a pattern of small green pears, one of the only things of Elena's that Darius had not been able to pack away. Amara had found it folded in the bottom kitchen drawer and asked that morning if she could borrow it. Darius had said yes without thinking. Patricia opened the door with her key, called out for Eli, and walked into the kitchen. She stopped in the doorway. The casserole dish in her hands trembled, then steadied. "Who are you?" Patricia said. Amara turned. The apron was dusted with flour. Her belly was now unmistakable. "My name is Amara, ma'am," she said quietly. "I'm staying here for a little while. I help with the house." Patricia set the casserole on the counter very carefully, as if the dish were the only thing in the room she still trusted. Her eyes moved from the apron to Amara's face, to her belly, and back to the apron. Something in her face broke, and she did not try to hide it. "That apron belonged to my daughter," Patricia said. Amara's hands moved to the strings at her back. "I'm sorry. Mr. Cole said—" "Where is he?" Patricia asked. "Where is Darius?" By the time Darius came home, summoned by a phone call, he could not remember answering. Patricia was sitting in the living room with her coat still on. Amara was upstairs. The apron lay folded on the kitchen counter. Patricia stood up when Darius walked in. 3 years, she said. Her voice was level, the way voices get when a person has practiced them on the drive over. 3 years, and you bring a stranger into Elena's house, a pregnant stranger. You let her wear my daughter's clothes. You raise Eli, my Eli, alongside another woman's child. You forget my daughter so completely that you let her be replaced like she was a chair. Darius did not answer at first. Then he walked past her into the kitchen and came back with the napkin Amara had handed him on the porch a week earlier. He had kept it in the small drawer of the table by the door, the drawer where Elena had once kept stamps. He held it out to Patricia. "Read it," he said. Patricia took the napkin. She read it. Her face changed very slowly, the way a frozen thing thaws. "This is her writing," Patricia said. "She gave it to that girl 8 years ago," Darius said. "At the bus station downtown. The girl was 16. She kept it for 8 years. She came here because Elena told her to. She didn't replace anything. Elena sent her to me, and I didn't even know about it." Patricia held the napkin in both hands. She did not say anything for a long while. Then she turned, walked to the door, and let herself out without saying goodbye. Later in the kitchen, Amara stood at the sink with her back to him. Darius leaned against the doorway. "I'm sorry," he said, for what she said. "She wasn't wrong," Amara answered without turning. "I am a stranger." He looked at her for longer than he meant to. Then he turned and went out to the garage. The text came on a Wednesday afternoon, 3 days after Patricia's visit. Amara's phone, a cheap prepaid she had bought at a gas station in another state, had been silent for 6 weeks. She had given the number to one person, only her aunt in Cleveland, the same aunt whose couch had not worked out, the only family Amara still had. She had not imagined when she left that number behind that Marcus would drive 8 hours to a quiet woman's apartment and stand in her doorway until she gave him what he wanted. The aunt would call later crying to apologize. By then it would already be too late. When the phone buzzed on the kitchen counter while Amara was kneading bread, her whole body went still. The message was 4 words. "I know where you are." There was no signature. There did not need to be. She did not finish the bread. She wiped her hands, walked to the storage room behind the house, and began to fold her few clothes back into the canvas bag. Her hands moved quickly because if they slowed down, they would shake. She wrote a note on a page torn from her notebook. "Thank you for the kindness. I am sorry to leave like this. I have to keep your son safe." She left it on the bed. She came back into the house to get her coat. She had hung it in the hall closet where she had also kept her toothbrush and a small comb. She did not see Eli sitting on the bottom step of the staircase until she had already turned to go. The boy was holding a piece of paper. He stood up. He walked over to her. He held the paper up so she could see it. It was a drawing. 4 people. A tall man with dark skin. A small boy with wild hair. A young woman with a round belly. And a baby no bigger than a thumb between them. Above the 4 figures in the careful crooked letters of a child who has just learned to spell Eli had written, "Family." Eli looked up at her. "Don't go," he said. His voice was soft and very serious, the voice of a child who has chosen his words ahead of time. "Dad can't say it, but he wants you to stay." Amara held the drawing. The walls of the hallway became unsteady. For the first time since she had walked out of Marcus's apartment in the middle of the night 4 months ago, she sat down on the step and cried. Not the tight, controlled crying she had done in motel bathrooms, but the kind that comes out of a body when a body has finally found a place to put it down. Eli did not say anything else. He sat next to her, leaned against her shoulder, and waited. That was how Darius found them when he came home from the garage at 6. He took in the canvas bag by the door. He took in the boy and the woman on the steps. He did not ask questions. He carried Eli to the kitchen, gave him a bowl of cereal, even though it was not breakfast time, and came back into the hall where Amara was now standing, the drawing still in her hand. "You owe me a story," Darius said. "After that, you decide if you go or you stay," she told him. About Marcus. About the apartment in Baltimore where the bruises had been small at first and then not small. About the way he had counted her cigarettes, then her phone calls, then her hours. About the night she had taken a pregnancy test in the bathroom of a gas station and known, looking at the second blue line, that her child would not grow up the way she had afraid of the sound of a key in the lock. About the bus to her aunt's house in Cleveland that had not worked out. About the napkin folded in her wallet for 8 years. About how she had finally come here because there was nowhere else her feet would carry her. Darius listened without interrupting. When she was finished, he reached across the small kitchen table and put his hand over hers only for a second, and then pulled it back. "You're not going anywhere," he said. "Not because of me, because of Eli, and because of the baby." He did not say because of you. They both heard it. There is a truth few people speak aloud. Leaving someone who hurts you is not weakness. It is the most demanding kind of courage a person can ask of themselves. Because an abuser does not only steal your safety, he steals the belief that you deserved safety in the first place. Amara did not leave because she was strong. She left because for the first time in her life she decided that the child inside her deserved a mother who believed she was worth saving. Sometimes courage does not look like standing and fighting. Sometimes it looks like a pregnant woman in the rain knocking on a stranger's door. Marcus came on a Saturday afternoon 11 days after the text. Darius had seen him in his mind for over a week. The man Amara had described, big in the shoulders, polite in the voice, the kind of man who smiled when he opened a door for a woman in public and counted her bruises in private. Darius had checked the locks every night. He had moved Amara's bag from the storage room into the small upstairs bedroom that had been a guest room when Elena was alive. He had told the foreman at the garage that he might need to leave on short notice. He had not told Eli anything because telling Eli would have meant making it real. The knock that Saturday was not like Amara's. It was loud, and it kept going. Eli was in the living room watching cartoons. Amara was in the kitchen. Darius walked to the door and opened it the width of his own body. He filled the gap on purpose. The man on the porch was exactly the size Amara had described. He wore a black coat. He was clean-shaven. He smiled. "I'm here for Amara," he said. His voice was even and warm, the voice of a man who had practiced sounding reasonable. "I'm her partner. There's been a misunderstanding. I'd like to bring her home." Darius stayed in the doorway. "She doesn't want to go home." "With respect, sir," Marcus said, "that's not your decision." "It's hers," Darius answered. "She's already made it." Marcus's smile thinned. He took a half-step forward. Darius did not move. "Step aside," Marcus said. "No." What happened next happened fast. Marcus shoved the door with his shoulder, and the door, which Darius had not braced his weight against, fully swung inward. Marcus was in the front hallway before Darius could close it again. He smelled of cologne and cold air. From the kitchen, Amara stepped into the doorway with a dish towel in her hands. Her face went white. Marcus saw her. His whole body changed, the smile gone, the warmth gone, a tightness in the jaw that Darius recognized from the description. "You," Marcus said to her. "You ran." Amara's hand went to her belly. Her voice, when it came, was not steady, but it was hers. "This baby is mine, not yours. It was never yours." "Don't tell me what's mine," Marcus said. He moved toward her. Darius stepped between them. Marcus shoved him hard in the chest, and Darius rocked back a step but did not fall. Marcus pushed past him and reached for Amara's arm. She tried to step away. The kitchen tile was wet from the dishes she had been washing. Her foot slipped. She went down hard on her side, both hands curled around her stomach, and the sound she made was not a scream. It was a small animal sound of a woman trying to protect something more important than herself. Eli was in the living room doorway. Darius did not see him at first. The boy had walked out from the cartoons without anyone noticing the way Eli walked anywhere quietly. He saw Amara on the floor. He saw Marcus standing over her. He saw his father just regaining his footing, putting himself between the man and the woman with the calm, terrible focus of someone preparing to be hit. Eli did not cry. He did not call out. He turned and ran. Out the open front door, down the porch steps, across the wet grass between the two houses, to the small greenhouse next door, the house belonging to Mrs. Eleanor Johnson, the woman Darius had not spoken more than 3 words to in 3 years, because grief had made him forget how to be a neighbor. Eli pounded on her door with both small fists. When Mrs. Johnson opened it, a thin black woman in her 70s with a cardigan thrown over her shoulders, Eli looked up at her and said in the loudest voice she had ever heard from him, "Please, there's a man hurting my Amara." Mrs. Johnson did 2 things at once. She pulled the boy inside and she picked up her telephone. There are moments in the life when the choice is no longer between right and wrong, but between standing up and turning away. Those moments do not define who we are in the eyes of others. They define who we are when no one is looking, and they decide more than any speech we have ever made about ourselves, the kind of person we have actually become. Inside the house, Marcus had not seen the boy run. His back was to the front door. His attention was on the woman on the kitchen floor, and the man standing between them. Darius had regained his balance. His ear was ringing from where Marcus's hand had caught him on the way past. He did not look at Amara. He could not afford to look at Amara. He kept his eyes on Marcus, and when he spoke, his voice was lower and steadier than he had expected it to be. "You are not going to touch her again." Marcus laughed, once a small sound without joy. Or nothing, Darius said. "You can hit me. You can do whatever you want to me, but you are not walking past me to her, not while I'm standing." Marcus came at him. The first punch caught Darius on the side of the jaw and rocked his head sideways. He felt the inside of his cheek split against his teeth, the warm copper taste of blood at once. He did not swing back. He set his feet wider and stayed in front of Amara. The second punch came lower into his ribs, and the air left his chest in one rough sound. He bent forward an inch, then straightened. Amara had pulled herself partway up against the kitchen cabinets. Her hands were still around her stomach. Her breath was fast and shallow. She was saying his name, "Darius, Darius, please," but he did not turn toward her. Turning would mean leaving the line he was holding. Marcus stepped back, breathing hard, and reached into the inside of his coat. The knife was a folding kind, the blade short but bright. Marcus opened it with a practiced motion of the thumb. He held it loose in his hand the way a man holds a tool he has used before. Something happened inside Darius then that he would not be able to explain afterward, not to a police officer, not to himself. He thought of Elena, but not the sick Elena, the dying Elena. He thought of Elena at the bus station downtown 8 years ago, sitting across from a 16-year-old girl with no shoes on her feet, writing an address on a paper napkin. He thought of Eli's drawing on the kitchen step, the 4 figures and the word family in crooked capitals. He thought of the small kicks Eli had felt under his palm in the evenings. He thought of a baby he had not yet met, but had already, without telling anyone, without admitting it to himself, begun to count among the people he was responsible for. For 3 years he had been a man who only had a son to keep alive. In the space of 1 breath, he became a man with 3. Marcus moved. The knife came forward. Darius did not try to outpunch a knife. He was a heavier man than Marcus, slower but stronger, and he used what he had. He stepped inside the swing instead of away from it, took the cut along the outside of his forearm and drove his shoulder into Marcus's chest. The 2 of them went down together against the kitchen counter. The knife clattered loose somewhere on the linoleum. Darius got his weight on top, turned Marcus face down on the floor, and pinned both wrists behind him with a grip that did not let go. Marcus thrashed. Darius held. He was not gentle. He was not cruel. He was simply heavier than rage, perhaps, for the first time in his life. The front door banged open. Mrs. Johnson came in first in her cardigan and her house slippers, with a cordless phone still in one hand and a fireplace poker in the other. Behind her came two of the neighbors from across the street, a tall man named Walter, who Darius had not greeted in nearly 2 years, and a younger woman holding a baseball bat she had clearly grabbed without thinking. Eli came in last behind all of them, his eyes very wide, his small chest heaving from the run. The sirens came a few minutes later. The deputies took Marcus out the front door in handcuffs. Amara was helped onto the couch. A paramedic checked her over and said gently that the baby's heartbeat was strong, but she should be seen at the hospital that evening to be sure. Eli sat on the arm of the couch and held Amara's hand the whole time and would not let go even when the paramedic asked him to step aside. Darius gave a statement on the porch. His lip was split. The cut on his forearm had been wrapped in clean gauze. His ribs hurt when he breathed. He felt in a way he had not felt in a long time entirely, their every nerve, every minute, every name. There is a difference between a man who fights out of anger and a man who fights because he has someone to stand in front of. The blow may look the same from the outside, but the soul behind it is not the same at all. Darius had not become a violent man. He had become a father wider than he had been before, a man with somewhere to stand and people behind him worth standing for. The early labor came 3 weeks later on a Tuesday night. Amara had been lying on the couch with a heating pad on her lower back watching a cooking show with the sound low. Darius was at the kitchen table writing out a check for the electric bill. Eli was upstairs supposed to be asleep, but as Darius would learn later, drawing under the covers with a flashlight. She made a small sound, then a louder one. Then she said very calmly, "Darius, it's time." He did not panic. He had been quietly imagining this night for weeks, the way a man imagines a road he will eventually have to drive in the dark. He helped her into her coat. He lifted Eli out of bed in his pajamas and carried him down the stairs without bothering to wake him fully. He drove the three of them to County General with both hands on the wheel and his eyes on the road and Amara breathing carefully in the passenger seat. In the back, Eli had taken Amara's hand through the gap between the seats. She did not let go of him until the nurses came out with a wheelchair. In the waiting room, Darius sat with Eli leaning sideways against him, half awake, half asleep. The vending machine hummed. The clock on the wall moved in slow jumps. Somewhere down a hallway, a woman was being told good news in a low voice. Darius rested his hand on Eli's hair and did not move it. Patricia came in just after midnight. He had not called her. Mrs. Johnson must have. Patricia walked into the waiting room in her good wool coat, her hair freshly combed even at that hour, carrying a small folded blanket in her hands. The blanket was pale yellow with a border of white stitching. Darius recognized it immediately. Elena had knitted it during the long hospital weeks before Eli was born, sitting up against pillows with a pile of yarn in her lap. The blanket had gone home with them from this same hospital 7 years ago, wrapped around their son. Patricia did not sit. She stood in front of Darius and held the blanket out to him. "For the new baby," she said. "If she would like it." Darius took the blanket. His hands were steadier than he expected. "Thank you, Mama," he said. He had not called her Mama since Elena's funeral. Patricia's eyes filled. She did not let the tears go. She nodded once sharply and sat down on the chair beside him and reached over and rested her hand on Eli's small shoulder, and that was how the three of them waited. The baby came at 3:47 in the morning, a girl, 4 pounds 11 ounces small, but breathing on her own with a thin, loud cry that surprised the nurses. A nurse brought Darius into the room first before anyone else. Amara was pale and exhausted, her hair stuck to her forehead with sweat, a small bundle wrapped in hospital cotton at her chest. She looked up when he came in, and her eyes were not afraid of him anymore. They had not been afraid of him for a long time, but tonight there was something else in them, a softness she had perhaps not been able to afford until now. "What's her name?" Darius asked. Amara looked down at the baby, then back at him. "Elena," she said. "If that's all right with you." He did not answer right away because answering would have required a voice he did not yet have. Then he sat down on the edge of the hospital bed and he reached out and he touched the baby's small dark head with one rough mechanic's finger and he wept. The kind of tears a man weeps when he has stopped being afraid of remembering. 6 months later, the back bedroom no longer had a closed door. Darius had opened it himself on a Saturday morning, with Amara standing in the hallway behind him and Eli holding the broom. They had cleared the room together. Elena's clothes folded into boxes for the women's shelter on 4th Street, her books packed for the church library, her Sunday hat kept because Patricia had asked for it. They had painted the walls a soft yellow, the color of the blanket. They had moved a small white crib under the window. Above the crib, Eli had hung a drawing of 4 people and a baby, the same drawing he had once held up to a woman on a staircase, only now redrawn larger with more color, and signed in the bottom corner with his full name. Elena's coat still hung on the hook by the front door. Beside it, Amara's thicker winter coat now hung on its own hook, the one Darius had screwed into the wall on a Sunday afternoon with Eli holding the screws for him. The 2 coats touched at the shoulders. Neither of them had moved them apart. The house had a sound now that it had not had before. Not loud, not constant. But there were dishes in the sink most evenings. There was a baby crying at strange hours, and a small boy whispering to her through the bars of the crib in the early morning. There was a kettle on more often than it had been. There were footsteps on the stairs that did not belong to a man trying to be quiet for the sake of a son who slept too lightly. On a warm evening in late spring, Darius and Amara sat on the front porch together. Eli was inside reading to baby Elena from a picture book in a serious voice. Through the window, they could hear him explaining the pictures. "I don't know when it happened," Darius said. "When I started loving you. Maybe that night you made the salmon stew." Amara looked at him in the slow porch light. "I knew," she said. "I was just waiting for you to say it." They did not kiss right then. They sat side by side under the yellow porch light and listened to a 7-year-old explaining the world to his sister, and that was enough, the kind of quiet that belongs to people who have come home. Not everyone who walks into our lives is meant to stay, but there are people we will never know who they are, what they could heal in us, unless we have the courage not to close the door. And sometimes the stranger who knocks on our door has been sent there by someone we lost a long time ago. Perhaps the greatest thing Elena left behind was not her coat by the door or her wedding photograph above the television, but an address written on a paper napkin pressed into the hand of a 16-year-old girl sleeping at a bus station one October night, 8 years before. Kindness sometimes takes the long way home, 8 years long to come back and rescue the very people we once loved most. The dead in their quiet way still find ways to take care of the living along roads we could never have drawn on any map. Be kind to strangers. One day, maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next year, that kindness will find its way back and knock on the door of someone you love.